All right, perfect. Welcome back, everybody. Mahalo again to our wonderful panelists from the first panel for sharing these great ideas to get our school year started. Hope you all had a wonderful, relaxing break to, stretch your bodies. And now let's get back together for our second panel, which will be focusing on anchoring students in proficiency at the start of the year. The focus of this panel will be on the concept of teaching language for proficiency. And we are very excited to have three teachers joining our panel on this topic. Our panelists will be Aya Shehata, Natalie Lalagos, and Will Smith. Thank you so much, Will, for coming back to the second panel. All right, panelists, are you all ready? Wonderful. Mahalo. All right. So let's get started with the first question. Please introduce yourself, including what you teach, where, etc. I'm wondering if Aya could start.
Okay. Hi, my name is Aya Shihata. What I need to do? I teach at Hiro High School. I teach Japanese 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that all I need to say? Yes. Thank you for having me today. Next, who was it? I can't remember, but Natalie?
Thanks, Aya. Hi, I'm Natalie Lalagos. I teach at Kealakekua High School. Next year, I'll be teaching Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4. And I also teach run a early college linguistics and translation program at Kealakekua High School. So I'm super excited to be here. And then I believe, Will, introduce yourself again.
Again? Twice? Oh man. That shiatsu's wearing off. Not. Good morning, everybody. Again, Will Smith from Waipa High School. I'm teaching Japanese 1, 2, 3, and AP this year.
Mahalo, panelists. Let's give these panelists a round of applause before we get started with our second question. All right. So let's see. Okay, so the question that we have for you is, we know that we're often thinking about what we do with students, what activities, what the strategies to use, et cetera, et cetera. We want to get a little bit more meta to start this panel. Could you share with us how you orient your thinking as a teacher towards proficiency? How do you think of teaching language for proficiency?
Starting off the easy questions. All right. Uh, I'm not gonna let everybody. It's probably I know all of you. If you're here during summer, this is a question you're thinking about and you're looking towards. When I have this question mastered, I will definitely tell you. But I can tell you the different aspects and the ways that I kind of think about it and bring along. So if my goal is proficiency, there's a couple things the students need to know what that is. So one of the things that I tell them, especially more at the upper levels, as we're getting a little more, proficiency doesn't mean perfection. And I really kind of alluded to it. The students are always looking for that right answer, right? They want to go to use Chat GPT or Gemini. They want to get the right answer at the expense of being proficient and being able to use the language to communicate what they're trying to say. And I work really hard, just trying to get them again to understand that mistakes are going to happen. It's part of it. It still happens with me. Think about English. When was the last time you spelled a word wrong in English? All the time, every day, right? Do I use proper English? No. But getting them to understand that it's a progression. It's not a black and white yes or no answer for language. And again, that's one of the hardest things I have to do as a teacher to get them to feel comfortable making mistakes, and I don't always get it. Even students are still really hesitant to use the little language they know for so many reasons, right? Maybe they think it's wrong. Maybe making like I sound like a 3-year-old. Yes, that's the point right now. But getting them to be comfortable with that has been one of my top goals for every level for a number of years. To also get them proficient, they have to have real life experiences. If I asked you, if I came up with some food that you've never seen and never eaten and asked you to cook it, you can follow the recipe and maybe what comes out is something there, but you don't really know until you experience it. And so another thing personally that I do, um, and if you've been around Waipa High School, right, I flood the school year with events. We have so many Japanese speakers coming on campus, students, peers, different things like that. Um, I think I counted out like last year we had over the course of the year, we had 15 different days where there were Japanese groups on campus and that the students were interacting with. And that gives them that again, they have that idea now. Okay, what does it mean to really communicate with somebody? How can I get my point across? How can I let them know something that I'm trying to say, even if it's not perfect? And I think that really helps. And then when they hear the Japanese students stumbling with their English, they understand, oh, okay, I'm stumbling with my Japanese, but they know that they can get together. So for me, again, the two biggest things for trying to get them to understand what it means to be proficient is you got to let go of this fear of mistakes, whatever that is, uh, and then giving them experiences to use at whatever level they're at, and hopefully grow with it with real speakers. And that's gonna, for me, that's how I kind of grow my program and grow, hopefully, the proficiency over time.
Natalie, you wanna go? Yeah, I'm same as well. It's I guess mind shift had to happen to me first. Used to be a teaching, okay, so this chapter is unit 3. We talk about family, what I need to do, this lesson 1. Oh, they have to do this kind of conjugation or past tense or whatever. We got to I had to change that shift to by the end of this unit, whatever you do, the topic or goal has to be more like a realistic for the students to talk about. Oh, they need to be able to talk about their family. They need to talk about, like it's not like at the end of the chapter, it's not by the test that a textbook provided, but they need to talk about their own families. They need to ask about their friends' families. So they could be able to do produce their languages, not by ChatGPT. They cannot produce their own stories by ChatGPT. So that kind of shift myself. That was the first part. And then, so that's how I provide a goal for the unit. At the end of the lesson, this unit, you need to be able to do this. So the students need to know that. So then we're going to do, I'm going to explain the students, it's messy process. And you're not gonna get it right answer in the first time. But over the course of lessons, you will get there. So don't stress out. And also, I don't stress out that kids are making mistakes. So that got to be a shift for myself. So that they don't, so as earlier at the session, one panelist said that has to have a nice environment, like learning environment, safe and then vulnerable environment. So the students feel safe to be able to make mistakes, but they learn each other from the mistakes. And then, but by the end of the unit, they can do what they need to produce. Right? Okay, Natalie?
No, I really appreciate all of that. I think for me as a student, I was definitely taught with the like fill in the blank, like grammar, and like my teacher would count the number of mistakes I made, right? Would actually be like, this is how many mistakes you get before you get this grade, and this is how many mistakes you get before you get that grade. And I think for me, like my shift in this was that it's not about mistakes. I'm not looking for those. I'm actually looking for evidence of what they can do. And that's what I tell them all the time. I'm like, proficiency is a measure of like what you can do. We're not looking for your errors. We're not looking for those things. That's what I tell the kids, and this is how I have to orient myself. I mean, I started teaching with like CI as the focus, except I didn't really know that's what it was then. That was just what my school was doing. It's like that's just what I did, right? But I still have like that way that I learned language, right? Was like looking for mistakes. So sometimes I'll even be looking at like a sample of like a student writing sample, and I'll be like, oh, they got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And it's still happening in the back of my head, right? But then I have to be like, nope, boop, like quiet that voice, right? And I'm actually looking for evidence of like, are they able to communicate in sentences? Are they able to use multiple verbs, right? And so I think for me, really orienting to like can-do descriptors, like our high result standards, like those actually for me are really helpful in moving away from like counting mistakes or looking for things and actually thinking about like what is it that students are demonstrating their ability level at. And so that's how I orient it to in my head. And that's also how I talk to kids about it. I think we're gonna get into more like questions about that as we go along, but that's really what it is. Kind of like this measurement of what you can do. And that's what communication is. It's like your ability to, communicate, which is also understanding. And anyways, we're gonna get all of that later, but I'll just pause there for the moment.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing how you orient yourself to teach language for proficiency. So based on your sharing, there's, reflecting on how you learn languages as a student towards shifting towards teaching language so that students can use the language to communicate in a real world setting. And, moving away from focusing on perfection towards using language to communicate meaning. That's really important. Thank you so much for sharing that. And our next question starts getting into what you can do, specific things that you do to ground your students. So how do you ground your students in learning a language with proficiency as the guiding principle? And what do you do with students, and how do you talk to them about proficiency?
I'll go ahead and start. So one of the things that I really orient to is like getting excited about communication, right? So there's a lot of different things I do. We actually talk about like actually get out the actual cone and we talk about it. And someone once told me that it's like pouring water in a cone, right? So especially for like my intermediate students, right? Those first little novice levels fill up quickly, but it takes longer to fill up the intermediate levels, right? And so that conversation. And then we actually look at samples, right? We do it in English sometimes. We do it in the target language sometimes, depends on the level and where we are in the school year. And I don't do it just at the beginning of the year. This is like kind of all year. So like one of my favorite warm-up activities is actually like, it'd be like 3 different ways to talk about your weekend, right? And or like what you did over the weekend or your favorite food. And then so it's like I give a novice low example, a novice mid, and novice high. And those are all actually in the target language by that point. We can do that. And then the kids have to identify which one's novice low, which one's novice mid, which one's novice high, right? And then I get excited. So when I'm going back over, I'm like, yeah, that's novice mid. But we still know they're talking about like pizza, like it's fantastic. Like I still know they're talking about pizza and I get like really excited about it, right? I'm like, it's still being, we know. And then sometimes another version of this warm up will be like, we look at different samples and then it's like, okay, take the novice mid. What would you do to make it novice high? And then that makes it really concrete for kids because we actually we talk about what happens at the different levels, and then they get really clear about like, oh, if we did it a little bit like this, like that would move it up to novice high, and that's really exciting. And so just kind of really getting them oriented around like what are the different levels mean, and that they're a measure of where we're at. And I talk a lot about how like those levels change depending, especially on what we're talking about. So if you like, I give an example. I was like, all right, so I am the last time I was tested an advanced low speaker, advanced mid writer, like whatever it was, right? This is what I was. And that was when we were talking about like my daily life. But if you were to ask me about like how to build a house, I don't have the vocabulary for that. I don't have the vocabulary for that in English either because I don't know how to build a house. I actually don't know how to build anything really yet. Later, maybe in the future of my life, I'll learn how to build stuff. We'll use the word yet there, but I don't. And so it shifts, right? Depending on, it shifts depending on like what we're talking about too. Bookcases, no, Will, I don't build those yet. We're going to keep using the word yet because maybe I could build them. But I give them that example because I say like, oh, you guys know how to talk about your weekend. But if I were to ask you about say what we should do when it comes to saving the planet from global warming. Like you might not have the vocabulary for that yet, and that's okay. And so like we shift our abilities depending on where we're at. I think I might have lost the plot of the question a little bit, so I'm going to pause there and let Aya or Will hopefully bring us back on track.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in next. Thanks, Natalie. So I use analogy or like a story, actual story about my daughter and my niece. So they're very similar age. So when my daughter was 2 or 3 years old, she was just speaking a lot. She got a she talk a lot. She make a sentence, start sentence earlier. She did really fast. She developed a language speaking skill very early on. But on the other hand, my niece, she was so slow. She was not saying much words. She was just looking at, she understands what I'm saying, but she didn't respond for a long time. So everybody thought maybe she needs some special education. She might need this. She might need to go therapy. So, but at the end, what happened was by age 5, kindergarten time, both girls were speaking perfectly for their age appropriate. And even now we compare, maybe she might have a better writing skills than my daughter does writing skills. So what I tell the kids is sometimes in this class, maybe that person speaks so good and I can't really do that. I feel I'm so stupid, but it's not that. So you're just building inside of you. You're listening, you're understanding, you're trying to understand that you eventually you're gonna boom, you're going to be able to speak, you're going to be able to write, but don't compare yourself to somebody else because we all learn the language differently. But at the end, you're going to be able to speak and write if as long as you try. So then kids like, okay. So that I use that analogy every time, just here and then just remind themselves, remind my students that don't compare yourself. You're doing great. And that I use that a lot. And then one more thing is I use that posters DOE, so Emily guys provided for us. We have a proficiency from the ice cube is the word to shave ice to finally very fancy shave ice design. So the proficiency. So we talk about where we are as a Japanese one. And then we're working on the be able to produce a vocab word or, simple phrases. That's what we're looking for. So I always remind using those posters that students, so don't think that you need to produce so much. I speak so much in Japanese, but you don't need to produce that output is a little bit different. So I remind that a lot using those posters. I also use for Japanese, I made an interpersonal communication rubric. It's shared by Gina. I'm going to put it in the chat. So, but I changed it for change that to a Japanese version. So, interpersonal speaking it's really hard to grade, and it's hard for students to understand where they are. So, I bring this in often. So, okay, so have them do like, okay, what did you do this weekend? So it's simple. 週末何をしましたか? Hi, partner と話してください. Speak with your partner. And then they talk about it. And then just hand out this. I laminate this. and then hand out this, okay, grade yourself where you are. And then like, oh, I'm this, I'm that. Okay, so let's make it to where you want to be. I want to be this. Okay, let's redo it. So let's go one more time. 週末何をしましたか? And then they start to adding different phrases, adding this, and then we talk about it, and then we pick one student, we share, I type up as a write and discuss, oh, this also, this is this. And so I show at the end how they could produce whatever they did a simple weekend task, but they could produce a lot more by just paying attention to small, like a proficiency steps that they can produce better. So that's what I do. All right. Well, anything to add? Of course you do.
Yeah. Thank you, Aya. Yes, to everything she said, and she stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to talk about that shaved ice example a little bit. I still will. One of my biggest growth areas and one of my challenges and something I'm not good at, and I've realized that this is something that can definitely help my students if I do this more consistently, if I can and be more clear, is helping them not just understand proficiency, but where they are at in that, right? I get so excited on, oh, what's coming next, what's coming next. I don't often sit down and celebrate where we are. So I was just thinking like that shaved ice poster, there is nothing wrong with that novice level shave ice. I will take that right now. Yes, please. Right? It's okay. I mean, I know we have that goal of getting that super fancy ice cream, mochi, matcha, blah, blah, that's great, right? But that's later. Celebrate where you're at now. Be aware of where you're at now. Um, and so one of my goals recently has been really going back and making sure the students understand what those proficiency levels are, but then also make them see that they have been growing in that and showing them, hey, do you guys remember even a month ago you had no idea what any of this was, and now you can do this. So going back and making that super clear, and I'm still trying to think of better ways. I've done like journals, and I've had things where we've had like the different proficiency levels broken down into the different modes of communication and being like, okay, where would you put yourself here? And then kind of like updating that. And then when there's a change, kind of celebrating that and being like, okay, what happened? Why do you think you were novice low last month, but now you think you're a novice mid now? What is that difference? Making sure that they understand that. So for those of you that, know me, I'm a big gamer. I play way too many video games. But one thing that I can get from that, or one of the things, games are really good at celebrating and letting people know when they're advancing. And I want to do that when I'm in my classroom to make it more of, congratulations, the celebrations. Yes, you've gotten over that next challenge, that next hill. So I know we have another one coming down the road. There's a higher hurdle to jump, but look at that one. You completely killed it, and celebrating with them where they're at, and not. I mean, I want them to, you know, know that there's forward momentum, but that's not the end all get all of everything. Yeah, to be content with where they are at now, but still a little thirsty for that next level. That's a super hard balance, right? And that's why some games fail and some don't. And there's a whole thing. I know you guys have all heard of, like, gamification and classroom stuff and all of that too. And there's upsides and downsides to all of that. But that's the one thing that I've been taken away recently, and I'm really trying to work on as far as getting the students to understand proficiency and their role in the language classroom.
I love that. I wanted to add on something. Will, like you're talking about celebration. I want to figure out a way I can do this like more regularly, but I save their very first writing sample from like the first week of school. And then I give it to them right before we take our final exam at the end of the year. And it is usually this beautiful moment where they're like, oh my gosh, like I just made a list of numbers 1 through 10, miss, and now I can say all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy, right? You grew so much. Pro tip, if you do that, it's great. It's a beautiful little celebration right before your final exam. It's like a nice boost for them. Don't put your writing samples in a place that's so safe that you can't find them when it comes to the end of the year. Okay. Because then you'll spend 2 hours looking for them. Not that that's happened, but yeah, it might happen.
Thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful ideas from, talking about the proficiency levels of the students, looking at samples at different sub-levels, using tools like the posters and, other visuals to show students where they're at and where they're going towards, to having conversations with students about where they are at, what's worth celebrating, what is celebratory, and to motivate them to continue moving forward. And I love that idea of keeping the first writing and showing the students at the end to show them how much they've grown. Those are really wonderful ideas. Thank you so much. And if you haven't seen it, please check out the chat. Thanks, Jingwan, for sharing the link to the Shape Ice poster. I think anyone with the link can access it. So please feel free to use it with your students. And also thank you, Aya, for sharing the interpersonal communication rubric in the chat box, which is a very nice segue to our next question. It is about assessing and grading proficiency. This is a really big question that we get often asked a lot when we meet with our teachers. So what does it mean to you to orient your assessment and grading towards proficiency?
Okay, I start this one. Okay, so well, students first need to know that I am in the class, especially level 1 or novice level I'm not really assessing their proficiency yet. I'm assessing more their performance. So like they practice with me in the class, hear the similar pattern over and over, so they can apply that to themselves to be able to produce kind of proficiency. Yet still it's very, very much guided performance based. But so that's what you're gonna be able to do it. So they're gonna know it, they're gonna be able to do it. It's not like a searching I need to Google how to say that. There's never like that. So I moved away. Another thing I did this past couple years is I moved away from grading from category as a homework, classwork, project, to I moved into presentational speaking, interpersonal speaking, to interpret reading or something like that. So more like aligned with our standards. Then I use 8-point scale, just every assignment except the assessment, 8 points. Or assessment is a multiple of 8, like 24 or whatever that multiples, 80 points, something like that. So 8 out of 8 is that like a exceeded proficiency, and then 7 is a B plus. So it's approaching, or like a proficiency. Actually, it's a proficient. And then 7, 6, 5 is the minimum. And then as long as they try, they're like developing proficiency. So I never give 0 or lower grade for students who try. So they see that where they are in their grade book. So like says, I did A. Like, yeah, so exceed my expectations, exceed this level. Like, how can I do it? So that become a conversation. Or maybe you should add and, or however, or those add on to your conversation, or you should do this. I could give them how to improve instead of penalizing, like how Natalie said, oh, you're doing this wrong, but more conversation becomes a positive conversation. So then the feedback as well, right? So you need to, of course, like how Will said, we need to celebrate where they are. Oh, good job, you did this. I like how you use this vocab. Or I like how you write this in kanji. Oh, that's so awesome. And then let's do this to go next level. So I give feedback for positive, what they're doing well, and then how they can exceed the expectation to the next level. So that's how I am now. Thank you.
Um, this is always the hardest question, I think. In every panel I've been on or work group, everybody's like, okay, I like all the CI strategies and everything. How do I put it in the grade book? How do I give them a grade? And I'm still struggling, I'm not gonna lie. Um, so many different things. But one thing I do for this um, is student self-reflection. They are so much more harder on themselves than I would be. It's really interesting in some ways. I'm still struggling with an effective and time efficient way of doing this, but this past year, I would be um, part of their grade is uh, how they are interacting and working in the classroom, and that is a self-assessment score. And it's really interesting. They know when they're not engaged or doing what they're supposed to do, and they'll be kind of quite honest with it. So usually, I'll just dedicate like the last 10 minutes of the last class of the week, and I got smart and put it in a Google form, but then and then it's just as simple about like based on different factors, where would you assess yourself? And it's kind of again like the proficiencies again. Um, if you want that A, here's, I'll give exemplars. Here's what an A looks like, or here's what this score looks like. Here's what the next score down looks like. So not only they'll know, they'll be able to find, okay, this week I think I was probably around four, a 4 out of 5 because I was doing these things. But then they also know what to do to get ahead, or to get that higher score if they really want that A. Uh, Again, still struggling with it. I discovered um so many different little mistakes and things I did. There's one kid that was like, whatever, and he filled out his entire quarter's evaluations all at one time, like ahead of time. And it's like, oh, okay. So learning lessons, right? Different things like that. So there's a lot of ways I'm going to be tweaking and adjusting this, but um yeah, it's really hard, I mentioned earlier about we have all these events with all the Japanese students on campus, and we spend a lot of time prepping for that, and that's a lot of different things that we do. And I know the kids are all working on their language skills, but on the day when the Japanese students are on campus and and interacting, I can't be in every position and be looking over their shoulder, making sure that Johnny is, oh, okay, yeah, he's definitely, I can't assess all of that. And so um it is still definitely one of my big growth areas. How can I do this effectively? Because I know that these events and these things that we're prepping for and the student interactions, they have incredible value. And I can see through other things, through other conversations that the students are having, that they are getting something from it. It's just really hard to assess exactly what that is and then put it in a grade book. And I'm still not quite there yet. Work in progress.
Uh, yeah, I'm with you, Will. It is kind of a work in progress. Like I've made many changes over the years, and every year I'm like, yeah, this is a good change. Like, this will be the change that gets me to where I want to be. And then later on, I'm like, yeah, still not quite there. But I'll just kind of share some general ideas. So when I talk to kiddos, I talk about how I'm looking, like I said at the beginning, I'm looking for evidence of your skills, right? Of what you can do. I'm not actually looking for mistakes. And I agree with Will, they're harder on themselves than I am. And I know this because when we do those, like, grade a sample, right? Like sometimes I have multiple choice, like which one's novice low, which one's novice mid, matching kind of deal. Sometimes I just put one up there and I'm like, what proficiency level is it? Like, what advice would you give to the student? And sometimes they'll be like, that's a novice mid. And then like when we go over it, I'm actually like, actually, there's evidence of like this is solidly novice high, and they're actually showing some like movement into intermediate low. And the kids are always, kind of that's how it is at the beginning of the year, and then they get a little bit better at it. But before assessments, I've really taken to like putting up prompt in the rubric, right? So they can see, especially if it's like a speaking assessment or a writing assessment, right? Put the prompt in the rubric up there. And our rubric is really based on like novice low, novice mid, novice high, right? And like here's what we're looking at the performance indicators. And so they have the prompt and they have the rubric. And then I say, okay, turn to a partner, like, what's your plan for tackling this assessment? Like, how are you going to show, like, because we have our target levels depending on level 2, semester 1, right, is like, no, that's wrong. Level 1, right, is like not like novice mid or novice high, wherever we are in the school year. And so it's like, turn your partner, like, what are you going to do to hit that level? And so then they actually get a chance to talk about it. And then they're being really thoughtful about like, what does this actually mean for me to perform at that level? And it lowers the anxiety too for assessments, right? Because it's not like, Miss is looking for mistakes. It's like, oh, she's looking for us to be able to do these things. And then they get to kind of plan it out with partner. They still have to actually then do it by themselves, but they get to have that pre-conversation. And then similarly to what I was talking about, I've actually similar but kind of different. I've actually done away with all the categories in my grade book, and it's all just assessments at this point. I don't grade homework. It's just like performance assessments essentially. And I allow students to retest any assessment within the quarter because I say, this is not a linear journey. You come in on Thursday in September and you didn't do well in the assessment, but then 2 weeks went by and your proficiency actually like went way up, especially around that topic. You're able to say a lot more. So just come back, do it again. Right. And I think that also focuses on how like proficiency is not a linear journey. Like, by the way, I was trying to find this image that I love, which I have on slides somewhere. And it's like this line, and it's like point A to point B. It's like how we think it's going to go or how we want it to go. Right. And then it's got like how it actually goes. And it's like loop-de-loops of this line from A to B. If you Google search it, at least the way I did, I only came up with photos of a dodo bird, which is really weird. And it has nothing to do with the actual image, but it's a great image. And I show that to the kids too, right? Like it's not always the straight line journey. So you can come back and take an assessment anytime. And then my assessments are on a 5-point scale. And 5 is like hitting the target where we're at, right? 4 is like the next proficiency level down. So like even if you don't do that well, like that well, I'm putting that in quotes because that's your own personal definition, you're still probably gonna score like a 3 or a 4 out of 5. Like you're gonna produce language and you're gonna be able to come back and try again. I think that also lowers anxiety too, if like you can try again, right? And you don't have to have it right this second. And in this moment. Yeah, and then really, like I said, it's for me, it's about looking for like evidence of what they can do. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to hear all the different things that you're doing to put a focus on proficiency when you assess and grade students. And, based on your sharing, it sounds like it's really important that we involve the students by constant communication with them about feedback and also involving them to reflect on their own progress and having conversations with them throughout the year to show them the progress. Mahalo. All right. So now we're gonna take a step back. So we have talked about what we do with students, how you assess and grade for proficiency. Um, could you please tell us a little bit about what was something that shifted your thinking regarding proficiency-oriented instructions? What was that one point or multiple points during your journey that helped you shift your thinking? Was it an experience, a PD, a reading, etc.?
I learned Japanese by living in Japan. I didn't know any Japanese when I went there because I was really smart. And trial by fire, figured it out. got accidentally hired at Waipahu High School as a Japanese teacher. And I remember this, I started my first year of teaching, and I was like, okay, I want to do like a complete immersion. I want to give them like the experience that I had. I had to figure it out, and I wanted to do that. And I failed miserably. It was awful. I later realized it was because I was living in Japan and was absorbing it 24/7, where the kids were just in my classroom for a few hours a week. There's no real chance. I also didn't have any idea of what CI was or anything like that. So none of the very little of the stuff I was doing was probably truly comprehensible. And so I started adding more grammar and different. I was like, oh, okay, it didn't work because maybe if I just do a little bit of grammar and different things. And then I went full on over the course of the next few years, uh, grammar, textbook, doing everything like that. And it still um wasn't working. I thought it was working, right? I was that marking the missing stuff, right? And the kids were getting grades, and I didn't realize it. And for the thing that made me realize kind of that I was on the wrong path, or that it just wasn't working the way I thought it was. Um, I had always had the students write out all the Japanese characters, the hiragana alphabet. And I was really strict about it. It's like, okay, you have to write them. There's 46 characters, and you have to take a test, and you have to write all of them out perfectly. You have to get 100% on that test 3 times in a row to be cleared. If you miss one on your second test, you start over. And I was crazy good, and most students were doing it. I still had some students that failed. Um, but then I had one student who passed it, and then later on that student's test, I look at the top corner of her test sheet, and she was writing out that chart on the top of her paper. And I said, why is she doing that? And so I sat down and talked to her. I was like, why are you writing a mini chart? You passed the test. You already know all of these. And why are you writing the chart out? And it turns out that she didn't know. She had memorized how to write the characters, but then so she could write it all out. So it'd be like writing out the alphabet A, B, C, D, E, but not knowing that that's an H. So you have to write it out, and then you have to go, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Oh, that one's H. Okay, and that's how they were doing it, which is not. They're not reading it, right? They're not. That's not proficient. They're not in it. They just brute memorized how to go. And that's when I kind of thought, okay, I need something. This isn't working. And that's when I started looking around for other things. I discovered TPR, not TPRS, TPR, total physical response. And that was my gateway into discovering all the different other things through for CI and everything like that. So I guess the experience was me failing. I was not getting my students where they needed to be. Um, or there were some students that were getting there, but it was not enough. So I wanted to do better and to find a more effective way to get the students to be able to use Japanese. And yeah, that was my experience in starting towards this whole process.
I had a similar experience of failure, but it was actually my own failure. Well, I didn't fail, but it felt like I failed. And I'll explain. So I did do one of those proficiency tests. I'm not going to say what it was for because then I think that violates the agreement of like, because I'm going to tell you what the question was. Okay. So you have to answer the question immediately after they ask it. There's no like think time. And so the question was like, so the population is aging at a rate that will soon exceed the number of like young people and workers in our economy. What do you think we should do about the large number of aging people? Beep. And then you're supposed to start speaking. And I'm like horrified because I don't know the answer in any language. I have no idea what to say, no idea. So I just start babbling, right? And it doesn't really matter what I said in the moment. And that was actually when I realized a lot about proficiency. We were looking at the upper bands, like the advanced bands, right? Because I was trying to pass the test. And I realized it really is about like, especially with like when you're looking at the lower levels, even when you're looking at like advanced low, it's that you're not counting the number of mistakes. You're looking at like what you can do with the language. And so that really like launched me into thinking about that for my kiddos. And then I started doing some different trainings like syllabi literacy, getting the advanced training. If you get a chance to do that, you definitely should. Emily didn't pay me to say that, but it's a really fantastic PD offered by the DOE. And it really got me thinking about like, what do these proficiency levels mean for myself, right, at that like higher advanced bracket, but then also for my kiddos. So really breaking them down, my own experience, and then also like that training were two of the things that really pushed me.
Okay, so it's I did the same thing, like went to all different the workbook and tests and fill in the blank, and at the end of the unit summary test, and my students even don't know how to say when, how, where kind of vocab. It doesn't pop up because it was not the part of that lessons, but it was all embedded, but they never studied for it, so they couldn't fill that out. And I said, why my students are so not getting this? So then I attended Gina Kanchi's Proficiency first, and then just this basic second language acquisition class that I learned how people learn the second language, and then how to help to reach those language learners to be proficient. And then that was a shatter my brain. And then I started this journey, taking all different sorts of the class, of course. And then I heard that, like, why am I, like, I still hear, oh, my students are so, sorry about a word, stupid, because they don't study, they don't care to memorize all this. They always fail my test. I hear that, but those classes told me that means they're not stupid. That means I am incapable of providing enough information for those students. They never received enough input to be able to produce. So it kind of came back to me like, oh, it's me. I need to use that word all the time so that they have enough input to, so that my first lesson was proficiency, how second language acquisition works, those basic classes. That shattered my brain. And then of course, that took many different classes. TPR, TPRS actually was a part of my starting point. And then also advanced, the test that Natalie just talked about, that was really eye-opening to see what is proficiency means by the testing people, so that my students can be recognized as silver literacy, or be able to recognize at the college level, or but at the working force, develop like workforce, like in a resume, how they can produce their own proficiency, say that state where they are, instead of, oh, I can speak 5 languages and then nobody trusts you, but instead I am an intermediate low in Japanese. In the resume, it makes so much more sense. So learn that through a VAT test training. So that was really good. Yeah. So also like like A typical A students, I want A. So since they give me all the work, I just gonna make every single things to the perfect, like how Will said, they freeze in the moment when the Japanese students come in and talk. But those that non-A students that once I switched out, so those are non-A type of students that had some having a focus issue or cannot sit still kind of kids, but they always come in and talk to me and then figure out. So because now I'm shifting from the paper, they need to fit into talking stories and they're talking about themselves. So they became such a flourished. I saw that aha moment, like, oh, it's actually working. So that, yes, that is a moment that I got into deep in this world. Mahalo.
Mahalo, everyone. Mahalo to our panelists for sharing, from your experiences. What was the point where you shifted into the way you teach languages? That's really inspiring to hear from your stories. And I checked the time. We're exactly at 11:50. So I just want to say thank you. Let's give another round of applause to our panelists for sharing their time and manao and experiences and all these wonderful ideas to anchor your teaching around proficiency for our students from the start of the school year. Natalie, would you like me to give you the presenting
Actually, if you
ability?
just skip
Scroll.
to
Okay,
go to the next slide.
got it.
And
Okay.
then the next one. Perfect. All right, y'all. We were
Oh,
so
this one.
grateful for go back. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly it.
Okay.
We're so grateful for everyone being here, for all of our panelists. I also want to shout out our HALT Summer Summit team. Thank you all for all the work that you've been doing on this. I always love to close my classroom, and I also love to close like any PD events that I do with appreciations, whether that's for each other, for yourself, for something you learned. So if we can get some of those in the chat, I think that kind of good energy is a good way to end. But if you are sticking around for the optional talk story lunch, delightful. We're going to take we're going to roll right into that, I think. Can I get actually a quick, before we do our appreciations in the chat? So if you just started typing an appreciation, go ahead, select it, copy it, pull it back out of the chat for a second. Who is planning on staying for that optional talk story lunch? Can you let us know in the chat if you're planning on staying? And it's okay if you're not. We'd love to have you, but also, you only have a limited amount of free time before the school year starts again. Okay, give everyone a minute in the chat if you're thinking about staying for that optional talk story lunch. Go ahead and throw in like, I'm coming. Give everyone a few seconds. Okay, Aya's coming. Imelda's coming. Already a dream team. Joyce is coming. Definitely a dream team. Anybody else? Okay. Guys, this is fantastic. All right, so we got folks coming. I just want to make sure I didn't hang out if no one was coming to lunch. We have a feedback form there in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know I got a lot out of it. We'd like to hear what you thought. And so please take a minute to fill out that form. Let's go ahead and get those appreciations in the chat. Any appreciations? I'll type one too. And they can be specific. Yes, transparency. We're very honest about, Will's like, this is a hard question. I'm like, yeah, we had to take it though. It's the right question to answer. Be honest about how difficult it is. Oh, awesome. Joyce shared the link. CCLT ideas. Sharing resources, tips, and experiences. Yeah, shared experiences. Stories and resources. Awesome. I try, Rachel. Okay, phenomenal. If you have any more, keep them coming. If you're staying for lunch, we're gonna hang out. I think Emily, you can go ahead and stop. Well, actually, you can go to the next slide. We have that. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Nancy. All right, y'all. We're gonna pause there, and if you're staying for lunch, we're happy to have you. Otherwise, we'll see you later. Have a great start to the school year.
Bye, guys. If you're not staying, happy new school year almost, or enjoy last bit of summer, guys.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your summer. I won't be able to say, unfortunately, but thank you so much. And mahalo, Natalie, for wonderful organization and leadership in making this happen.
Thank you all. Thanks, team. Enjoy your last couple weeks here. Go to the bathroom whenever you want to go to the bathroom, right? Really get your fill of sleeping in, all those things.